Alright, so anyways, today I'm gonna do something a bit different. Today I'm gonna be doing a history vid on the history of World War I. So anyways, the map I'm using here is from Supremacy 1914, and it isn't really the map of 1914. In 1914, the Ottomans didn't own this land in the Balkans, and Poland was owned by Russia. Also, Belgium wasn't owned by, the Netherlands wasn't owned by Belgium. Yeah, also Norway also is a country, and Finland is also owned by Russia. Anyways, those are the only discrepancies on this map. Oh wait, there's no Morocco either. Anyways, so what happened in 1914 would eventually lead up to the war. Anyways, what started the war was an Austrian nationalist from Serbia would assassinate the Archduke in Bosnia. I think his name, yeah, that's him. He was assassinated by a Serbian nationalist in Bosnia. He had done this, I believe, because Bosnia had a high population of Serbians, and they felt like they owned it, which they should have. Anyways, Austria-Hungary was pretty mad about losing their future king, which would see them deliver an ultimatum to them. This ultimatum was known as, I don't know the name of it, I think it was the July ultimatum or something, and, or his ultimatum. I don't know, but they didn't accept it. And when they didn't accept it, Austria-Hungary declared war. Germany was great allies with Austria-Hungary, so they supported them. Russia was good allies with Serbia, so they supported Serbia. France was good allies with Russia, so they supported Russia. They supported Serbia as well. And Montenegro, which also doesn't exist on this map, supported Serbia. That's pretty much how the war went down first, I think. Yeah. Anyways, so when that broke out, it would be pretty much a sort of stalemate in the Balkan. Skirmishes on the border and attempts for the Austrians to break the Serbian border. The Germans would get pushed back a little bit here. But, no. The German plan right now was in the east, actually. Russia right now was preparing their armies when they first declared war, and they were still doing that. The German plan was to go through Belgium to wipe out France, but the only problem with that is it'd bring Britain into the war. The Germans were willing to take that risk because France needed to be wiped out. So they went right through Belgium. They committed some bad atrocities too. The Belgians were pretty strong though, as they held the Germans off as French troops started reinforcing the land. Although those reinforcements were not enough, as they pushed almost through Belgium. They also pushed in the French territories here, which were ruined. The French held on to Belgium and reinforced a small bit of land here, which continued fighting for the war. After the German offensive, they continued moving to take Paris, although the French then were ordered not to retreat, which saw the Germans start getting pushed back. The Germans didn't want to get pushed back to Belgium, so they held the line at stalemate. This is when Russia had officially mobilized, and they invaded East Prussia from Germany. They tried to take Königsberg, but after a battle at Tannenberg, the Russian armies would be encircled, and the Germans pushed way deep into Russian Poland, and would probably capture it somewhere around 1915. Anyways, I think after these events, the Ottomans would join the war, looking to get some Russian land and other allied Entente land. Also, the Allies, they weren't called the Allies then, they were called the Entente. So the Entente, right now, was in stalemate with Germany and the Central Powers in the West. Austria-Hungary was still at stalemate with Montenegro and Austria. Italy, which was in the Central Powers, should have joined the war, but they were considering not to. Actually, they were considering to join the war against the Central Powers. And they would do this in 1915, when the Allies offered them bits of when the Allies offered them South Tyrol, and I think it's called Styria. They also offered them the the Dalmatian coast. Anyways, they promised these lands to Italy, which got them into the war against the Central Powers on the Entente side. Anyways, the front then turned into a stalemate as they continued fighting in this region in the mountains. Russia continues to get pushed back, and in the Balkans, in the Balkans, the Central Powers enlist the help of Bulgaria to wipe out Serbia, and then in exchange for Bulgaria's help will give them Serbian lands when they win. The Bulgarians accepted it, and they wiped out Serbia pretty fast, which retreated to Albania here, which doesn't exist on this map. Anyways, Greece also had been in a tough situation whether they joined the war. They get in a brief national schism where the Prime Minister and the King were against each other, although the King abdicated and the schism reunited Greece, and Greece would join the Entente. Also in the east here, which isn't on this map, the Russians and the Ottomans continue fighting in the Caucasus. They also fight with British Kuwait, and they also fight near North Africa. Anyways, right now, the Central Powers are fighting pretty hard. The year was 1916 now. Yeah, that's it. The year is now 1916. In 1916, a lot would happen with Russia, as Russia continued to get pushed back. France, not much difference happened in France. Although in 1916, the Lusitania would get sunk, which would see, I think 100 Americans die. Which is pretty bad. Anyways, this would be one of the events that would soon bring America into the war, which would ultimately lead the end of the Central Powers. Anyways, the Central Powers are pushing deeper into Russia. The Ottomans were also starting to make advances. Romania then joins the war after an offensive near Galicia and Poland was made by the Russians. This is known as the Brusilov Offensive, which caused Romania to join the war. But after Romania joined the war, they pushed into Transylvania here in Austria-Hungary. Russia made a few brief offensives near Galicia, although when Bulgaria invaded Romania from the south, things went really bad, as they got pushed out of Wallachia here and continued fighting for Moldavia. Anyways, this is really bad for Russia though. Their ally who had just joined the war just got pushed back, and now they were using even more men to keep them alive in Moldavia. A lot of Russians didn't want to join this war, and the Russian Communist Party decided to revolt, because they wanted to start what they wanted. They wanted to start what they wanted, which is known as the Soviet Union. Anyways, now Russia was fighting themselves and the rest of the Central Powers, which was of Germany, Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria, the Ottomans, and yeah, that's it. Russia pulled out of the war after the Treaty of Brest-Litov. That's it. Anyways, the Treaty of I think it was Brest-Litov actually. The Treaty of Brest-Litov saw Germany and their allies. They gained Poland as a puppet, which would be a puppet state of Austria and Germany. They also formed something in the Baltic, I think, called the United Baltic Provinces, which would be a puppet of Germany, I believe. They also formed Lithuania into a puppet. They also had Belarus as a puppet, and Ukraine as well. Unfortunately, the Soviet Union would invade many of these states, and the United Baltic Provinces would break up to form the Baltic States. And they would shortly be invaded by the Soviets after, except for Poland though. They managed to actually defeated the Soviets later. Anyways, right now Russia had just pulled out of the war, and the year was 1917. Tanks are a new thing on the Eastern Front, and with Russia out of war, Germany can only focus on one front now, which is great for them. But unfortunately, holding a large mass of territory in the east was pretty difficult, and meant they needed a lot of troops there too, so it was still sort of like they were holding a front. Anyways, the Germans decided to make a few attempts forming an offensive here. Although these attacks would be seen as brutal to America, so the Germans decided to do something before these attacks to get America's eyes off of Europe. So they sent a telegram to Mexico, which wasn't in the best condition right now, to attack America, and they promised their old territories back. Mexico never saw this, and Britain eventually, I think they got the message actually. I don't know how they got it actually, but they got the message and they forwarded it to America. America saw it and they would join the war. With America in the war, the Germans knew that they needed to make a bunch of attacks in order to pull out of France before the American troops arrived, which would see a series of offensives made. I think these were known as the summer offensives. And they saw bits of land taken by Germany, although not much land was gained. The Americans would then arrive, and the Germans started getting pushed into Belgium. More British forces would start arriving in Greece, and they would push into Macedonia, which would see the Macedonian front collapse. And there were offensives made in Serbia and Bulgaria, which saw Bulgaria pull out of the war. The Ottomans would soon follow, since the British were pushing into their state, and they surrendered. Actually, no, they signed something called armistice. The Austro-Hungarians would do the same, as they were now collapsing from the Italians and the other Entente forces coming from Greece. The Germans were now only fighting alone on the Eastern Front. American troops were arriving, and they would be driven out of Belgium, which would see them sign armistice, ending the war. After the war, several changes would be made in Europe, and they would be ultimately against the Central Powers. Anyways, the only Central Power state to exist after the war would be Germany, although they would no longer have their empire. Anyways, many of the treaties were harsh against Germany, which eventually would lead to World War II. Alright, that was the history of World War I. I'm cutting it.